She's gonna.
Well, thank you. It is, can everybody hear me in the back? Is it loud enough? It is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm getting some kind of feedback. Okay, there. No, I'm still getting feedback. Well, we're going to try it without worrying about it. So again, my name is Keena. I am your Dakota County attorney. A little bit about myself. I have been with the Dakota County Attorney's Office. Yeah, I don't know where that's bouncing off from.
There's a Zoom call involved with this.
Yeah. Okay. No, we still have it. Yeah, it's. Can you turn your sound off? I don't mean to chase you from the room.
It was out of his apartment.
Okay, there. That's better.
Yep.
So I have been with the Dakota County Attorney's Office for 25 years. I have held several different positions in the office. I started as a line attorney in the criminal division, prosecuting crime. I was then in our civil division for 8 years. And then in 2013, I was promoted by then County Attorney Jim Backstrom to the criminal division head. In 2019, I was promoted to the position of chief deputy. And in 2021, when Jim decided to retire, he was still midterm, and the county board appointed me to fill out his position. And then I was up for election in 2022 and was elected to this post. Prior to that, I was in the state of Washington for 3 years doing civil work. And prior to that, I was out in Lyon County, Minnesota, which is Marshall is the county seat. And I started as a line attorney there and then was the county attorney there for a few years until I moved to Washington. So I became county attorney out there when I was the ripe age of 29. So I have a lot of experience. And I'm very passionate about what I do and love being the Dakota County attorney most days, not every day. So I thought I'd start by just telling you a little bit more about the county attorney's office and what it is we do. When you're hearing my name in the paper, it's usually associated with a major case that we're prosecuting, but we do a lot more than that. So county attorneys, along with the county sheriff and the county commissioners at the county level, we're all elected officials that serve a term of 4 years. My office, we have approximately 100 employees. 46 of those, including me, are attorneys. And by law, we're required to perform several different duties. And I'm going to briefly go through what some of those duties are. And the 100 employees that we have are spread across 5 different divisions performing those duties. So we have the civil division. As the county attorney, I serve as the legal advisor to the Dakota County Board of Commissioners and all the county departments. For those of you who may not know, the county has about 2,000 employees. So we're providing legal advice on a number of different areas on the civil side. So we're doing contracts, labor law, environmental law, real estate acquisitions. If the county on the road projects, for example, need to take somebody's property to widen a road, that's called eminent domain. Our office gets involved in those. We represent the county in all the civil litigation that we do. So for example, if the county gets sued, we see a lot of, for example, out of our jail, we sometimes have inmates who are claiming they were injured or, they weren't treated appropriately while they were staying guests in our jail. We get a lot of those. Or employment related matters. If somebody was fired and they, file a grievance or file a lawsuit, it's our office that actually represents the county in those. We also enforce all the environmental related ordinances that the county has. That includes hazardous waste. And as I'm sure you realize, the county has a lot of landfills. And so we have a solid waste ordinance that impacts the landfills, but also anybody else who may be violating our solid waste ordinance. For example, somebody may be burying garbage in their yard or hazardous waste, then we may get involved in enforcement action. And then the civil division also handles any forfeiture actions. And what I mean by that is if somebody commits a crime, especially with a drug crime, if at the time of their arrest they are found with a bunch of money that we can establish was obtained as a result of their illegal drug activity, we can actually seize that. Law enforcement can seize that. And then once the criminal case is completed, if that person's convicted and we can establish that that money came from the drug activity, then that money is kept by law enforcement and then it's split out certain ways. So for example, out of that amount that they seize, my office gets 10%, which I then can turn around and use for anything prosecutor related, like training. So it's a nice little slush fund for my office. So we actually have 2 office locations. So we have our primary office is in Hastings at the Judicial Center, but we also have a satellite office in the Northern Service Center in West St. Paul. And that's where our child support division is located. And they are responsible for bringing actions to obtain or enforce child supporting obligations or requiring a parent to provide medical insurance for a child. And then we also establish paternity. We do paternity actions. Oh, got ourselves a warning. What is it? Do we need to? I'm not kidding you. The sun was just shining. Okay. It's just a severe thunderstorm warning. All right. Okay. So in cases where a woman is receiving public assistance, then our job is to go find the father and establish paternity and try to collect child support from the father to pay back the county for any money that's getting paid to the mother. So in 2024, just to kind of give you an idea, our office was involved in collecting over $37 million in benefits and child support for children. So it doesn't get highlighted very often, but it's really important work. Why are we not moving forward? All right, this just froze up on me.
There you go.
Okay. So one of the other divisions that we're going to talk about more is the Juvenile Protective Services and Appellate Division. And as county attorney, my office is responsible for prosecuting all levels of crime that are committed by juveniles in Dakota County. So right now, any child who is between age 10 and 17, whether they're committing a misdemeanor offense, which is the lowest level offense, a gross misdemeanor, which is the middle, or a felony, which is the most serious crimes we have in Minnesota, our office prosecutes all of those. We also file what are called child in need of protection or services petitions. And so with those, we're working with our social service agency. If we have a child who's being neglected or abused and needs to get out of the home for safety purposes, we file what's called a CHIPS petition, and with the idea that the hope is that you're going to reunify that family. And that's what you're working towards. But if it's so bad, it can lead to a termination of parental rights. We also initiate legal proceedings to protect the health and safety of vulnerable adults. We do guardianships, conservatorships. We also, if we have somebody, we file what are called involuntary civil commitment petitions. And those are for people who are a harm to themselves or others, and they have a substantial mental health disorder or a substance abuse order, so drugs and alcohol, or if their mental health is so bad, if they're suicidal or a danger to others, then we file a petition. And then we also, this division is responsible if we have any appeals. So for example, on the criminal side, if we get a conviction in a case, we go through a jury trial and we get a conviction, the defendant has the right to appeal. And so we obviously then have to respond to that appeal. Our criminal division is the largest division in our office. We have 18 attorneys in that division, and they are responsible for prosecuting all felony level crimes committed by adults in the county, and also responsible for prosecuting a few targeted gross misdemeanor level offenses, such as criminal sexual conduct in the 5th degree and a malicious punishment of a child. And then we are also responsible for prosecuting all misdemeanor level offenses that occur outside or in the unincorporated parts of the county, so out in the townships. We prosecute all levels of crime that occur in the unincorporated areas of the county. So all other misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors are charged by the city attorneys. Every city in Dakota County has their own city attorney. And so we're only typically dealing with the most serious cases that are committed, the felonies. All the other levels of crime are typically being prosecuted by one of the city attorney offices. We also, by statute, we have, victims have several rights, crime victims. And, they have the right to be notified of what the charges are. They have the right to be notified if we're going to enter into any plea offers. We notify them beforehand what we're going to offer and get their feedback. And oftentimes, if they're not on board with it, we don't move forward with it, or we change the plea offer so that you can never make a victim whole, but I at least want them to be as satisfied as possible with how we're trying to resolve the case. So we have a victim witness unit. We have 5 victim witness specialists that's what their job is. And, victims also have the right to provide a victim impact statement at the time of sentencing. They have the right to restitution. And so we really try to help them navigate all of that and really navigate the criminal justice system as their case is moving forward. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our juvenile delinquency cases and just kind of show you the numbers of the cases that we prosecute. So this graph shows you a 5-year look back period on the number of cases juvenile delinquency cases that we've charged. So in 2024, we charged a total of 599 cases, and that includes misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and felony level cases. So if you compare that to last year, we had a decrease of 16 cases that we charged. And that lower line, that tan line, that represents the number of felony cases that we charged. So out of that 599 cases on the blue line, 144 of those were felony level cases. And that's where the decrease came from. You'll see on the blue line, there's a decrease of 16 cases, and that corresponds with the number of cases or less cases that we had in 2024 as compared to 2023. You'll see that we had a real downhill slide, nice downhill slide to 490 in 2021. I think that was due to COVID and that kids were home and not out misbehaving. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm surmising that. This next is a graph of, so we have 12 different law enforcement agencies in Dakota County referring cases. So they do all the investigation and then refer the cases, their investigation, to our office. The county attorney's office does not have their own investigators. That's done by the police departments and the sheriff's office. So this just, we track because the law enforcement agencies like to know how many of the cases that we charged came from our jurisdiction. And so you'll see, actually Apple Valley was the big winner in 2024. They referred in, and well, the most cases that were charged came out of Apple Valley. And then Burnsville came in at number 2, and South St. Paul came in as number 3. So in addition to charging crimes, or in dealing with juvenile delinquency, juveniles are treated differently. I mean, juveniles, the language we use, they're not convicted, they're adjudicated. It's a softer language that we use with juveniles, and the whole point of the juvenile justice system is rehabilitation, and that, you know, we want to try to do things to rehabilitate them so that they're not continuing to commit crimes into adulthood. By law, county attorneys are required to have a diversion program for juveniles, and that also holds true for adults. We're required by law to have a diversion program. In our office, we call them youth accountability programs, and we currently have 6, and they are for first-time offenders and who have not gone through a diversion program before or have not been adjudicated delinquent. And so like our low-level property crimes, those again are for kids who are committing like criminal damage to property. Like if they, you know, throw a rock through the window, or I was going to say scratch a Tesla, but it's kind of a sore topic right now. But that would be the type of, you know, if it's valued, if the damage is $5,000 or less, then they would qualify for that program. We have an alcohol and cannabis program. We started a disorderly conduct program because we're seeing so many kids coming out of schools, the police were getting called to the school for disorderly conducts. And what we were finding that we were starting to see some racial disparity, that it was primarily the Black kids that were getting cited by the police for this. And so we started this diversion program. But again, it's got to be first-time offenders. We have a fire setter education program. Frankly, we don't have many fire setters anymore. Like, back in the day, that used to be a big thing for kids, and we rarely get any fire setters referred into the office. One program that's been really popular is peer court. And what peer court is and the juvenile has to agree to this, but we have certain high schools in Dakota County that run this, and we have an actual district court judge who runs the court. We have a prosecutor there, and the juvenile appears typically with a parent, and they present their case, and they have to admit what they did. And then we have a jury of kids from that high school who decide what the disposition is going to be and what this kid has to do as punishment. And so we've got the kids in the jury who are learning about the justice system, and a kid who's being held accountable for what he or she did. So to give you an idea, this is a graph that shows a 5-year look back period on the number of juveniles that have been referred into one of our juvenile accountability programs. And these numbers are in addition to the number of cases that we charge that I reviewed with you earlier. So this is a 320 additional cases that we did something else with besides charging them. And so in 2024, we had 320 cases that were referred. It was a little jump over last year. And again, you'll see in 2020 and 2021, again, I think COVID, and some people have asked me, why was there an increase from 2024 over 2023? Because it fell from 2022 and then came back up. I don't know if any of you were catching any of the controversy about schools having school resource officers in the schools. So in 2023, that's when that was happening. And so a lot of the police departments in Dakota County pulled their school resource officers out of the school. And that's where a lot of our referrals come from, are things that kids are doing in school. So I think that's why there was fewer cases in 2023. All right, so let's move to the adult felony cases. Same type of graphs. This graph is a 5-year look back period on the number of adult cases that we charged with a felony. So what this number doesn't reflect is we average about 3,000 cases a year that get referred into our office for charging review. And generally, we decline probably 25 to 30% of those. And typically the decline, if we don't charge a case, it's because we can't meet the elements of a felony offense. But then typically what happens is that case then gets referred over to the city attorney for a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor charge. So for example, for a felony DWI, you have to have 4 prior convictions within 10 years. And those driving records are really hard to read. And so law enforcement will refer it to our office and we review it and see that the person only has 3 convictions in the last 10 years. So then it gets kicked over to the city attorney. So last year we charged 1,685 felony cases. And out of that number, that tan line represents the drug cases that we charged. So out of the 1,685, 380 of those were felony level drug cases. And both lines, as you can see, we had decreases. So likewise, as with the juvenile delinquency, we track which agencies, the cases that we charged, which agencies they came from. And the winner last year was Egan with 246. Burnsville was number 2 with 233. And West St. Paul was number 3 with 179. Apple Valley was number 5 out of 12 with 169. So when we're charging drug cases, we like to track the drug type that was involved in the case, just to kind of keep track of the trends that we're seeing. And so methamphetamine is by far the number 1 drug that we see in our prosecutions. And that's been true for a long time. And that's been true, remember back in the day when people were making their own meth and blowing up buildings and stuff. So from a safety standpoint, that's gotten a lot better. But from usage, meth is still popular. It's just now coming from Mexico. The one that's been frightening is you'll see fentanyl. And when I'm talking about fentanyl, I'm not talking about the fentanyl that a doctor prescribes you or that you get after you've had surgery. This is illicit fentanyl that is being made in Mexico and shipped all over the country. And it can be mixed in any type of drug, or typically what we see is they stamp it into a pill that looks like a legitimate pill. And it only takes 2 grains of sand for someone to die from fentanyl. It's very, very potent. In fact, in Dakota County in 2023, we had 47 fentanyl-related overdose deaths. And in 2024, that actually went down to 30 deaths. And I'm guessing because Narcan has become more available. And so we, aren't losing as many people, aren't dying from it. But fentanyl overdose deaths are currently the number 1 cause of death of adults ages 18 to 47, or excuse me, 18 to 45. So it's very dangerous. So as with juveniles, I mentioned we also are required to have a diversion program on the adult side of the world. We have one low-level property crime program. And again, that's like I mentioned with the juvenile delinquents, that you have to be a first-time offender. And the value of the damage or whatever, a theft, if you committed a theft, it has to be under $5,000. We also have 2 different drug diversion programs. And, if any of you who know anybody who's ever had issues with substance abuse, they relapse, and it's common, and so we try to take that into consideration when I'm prosecuting low-level drug crimes, people that are possessing because they're using it, they're not selling it. And so we have a pretrial program that is, again, for first-time offenders. And we had 31 adults enter that program. We then have, so in those situations, we typically don't charge the case. We just hold on to it and have them do diversion. And if they successfully complete it, we don't charge it. But if they don't successfully complete, then we charge the case. But then we have, if we have a person who's come in on a second offense, and they meet, again, it's a low-level personal use drug possession case. We work with our Dakota County Community Corrections Department, who provides probation services. And we have this repeat program. They have to plead guilty, and they receive a sentence that if they successfully complete the program, the conviction won't be entered on their record. We also have treatment courts, which are specialized courts that they're really tough. People who go into these treatment courts are my heroes, because it is, when you first come into a treatment court, you can only do it for certain offenses. So, obviously we're not putting people who are committing sex crimes and obviously murders. It's got to be a certain level of crime and below. But for example, like with drug court and veterans treatment court, the participants have to meet certain criteria. And if they're allowed into the program, they have to appear in court twice a month. They have to do random drug testing 2 or 3 times a week. They don't know until that, on any given day, they have to go check their emails to see if they have been selected that day to go in for drug testing. And then they have to, any treatment that is being recommended, whether it's mental health or substance use, they have to follow through on all of that. And so we have an adult drug court. We have a juvenile drug court, which is the only one of its kind in the state of Minnesota. And then we have a veterans treatment court, which I initiated back in 2021 after I became county attorney. And Dakota County never had its own veterans treatment court, but Carver County did. And so we partnered with Carver County and did a treatment court with them. And we are now kind of out on, we're on our own right now. And since we started that program, we've had 37 admissions into veterans treatment court and 25 successful graduations so far. So I have a soft spot in my heart for veterans, and some of the things that they've experienced and the mental health issues that they have as a result of their service needs to be recognized. And so we have any veterans in the, no. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the homicide cases. These are the major cases that our office prosecutes. And so I thought, does anybody like true crime shows? It's okay if, yeah, okay. My mom does, my 82-year-old mother. And so I just thought it would be interesting to share with you some of the cases that, not all of them, I'm not going to share all of them with you, but a few of the homicide cases that are currently active in our office. And so when I talk about the facts of these cases, I'm talking in terms of alleged facts, because they're innocent until proven guilty. Some of them are going to be a little more easier to prove because of statements they made and evidence that we have. But just keep that in mind. So the first one, this was occurred back on June 29th in 2024 in Lakeville in the parking lot of the Amazon Fulfillment Center. And oddly, that is the second homicide they have had in that parking lot in the matter of 2 years. We had one in 2023 where a pregnant woman was dropping her partner off at work, and they'd been in an argument and whatnot, and he ended up pulled out a gun and shot her and killed her. And obviously the baby died as well. The baby lived for 9 days. So then now they had this one. And so the defendant is Mohammed Harrod. He's was 24 years old at the time of this homicide. The victim was a friend of his, Amid Karif, who was 22. And the victim and Mr. Harrod both worked at the Amazon Fulfillment Center. And those two and a third person drove to work together that day, and they were working the same shift. And Mohammed Harrod had just gotten a new, and I'm not real, I don't know a lot about guns other than that they kill people and you can hunt with them. But he had some kind of flashlight attachment on his gun that he had just gotten. And on a break, he went out to his car. It was like 1 a.m. He went out to his car and he couldn't find the flashlight attachment. So he went in back to work, told his two buddies, including the victim, that I can't find my flashlight attachment. So then they all three went out to the car together on another break at 4 a.m. and looking for it, didn't find it. And so Mr. Harrod starts accusing the other two of having stolen his flashlight. Mr. Harrod and the victim got into a physical tussle and they broke apart, and Mr. Harrod pulled out his gun and pointed it at the victim, and then the victim tried to grab the gun because he was afraid that he was going to get shot, and he did in fact. Mr. Harrod fired the gun twice and killed Mr. Karif. So he is currently charged with 1 count of second-degree intentional murder, and we had a contested evidentiary hearing on March 7th, which is still under advisement by the court, and I'm not sure why it's taking so long. Then we had the next in line in 2024 was Josephine Powers. She was 25 years old at the time of this alleged offense. This occurred July 9th, 2024 in Burnsville at the home of Ms. Powers' father. So she was staying at her dad's place while her dad was on a 2-week vacation in Europe. And while he was gone, she was inviting people over, including the victim, Michael Riccio, who was 72 years old. And so I'm not really sure what was going on there. Likely it was drug related. But anyway, they got into an argument and she shot the victim 1 time in the head. So instead of reporting it, she just let the victim lie there for several days. She then persuaded a friend of hers, a male friend by the name of Chris Hawkins, to help her remove the body and conceal it somewhere. So they wrapped it in carpet and transported it in the back of a truck, a pickup, and took it over to a place where this Chris Hawkins was staying. And they put it in a plastic tote out by a shed. And after it was learned that the victim had been killed, they recovered the body 10 days later in July. So you can imagine what that was like. So she is currently charged with second-degree intentional murder, and her next hearing is coming up on May 27th. Interestingly, she has decided to represent herself. She has standby counsel, but she has told the court, and she's been advised of all the risks of doing so, but she right now is representing herself. And I think what she's trying to come up with money to hire a private attorney rather than getting appointed a public defender. But anyway, so Jack Ball, this is, I will can say with every confidence that this is the most horrific case in my years in the county attorney's office that we've prosecuted. So Jack, he was 23 at the time that this occurred. This happened on May 23rd, 2024 in Lakeville. The victim was his pregnant sister, Bethany. And he invited his sister over to his place for dinner on this date. And I can't get into all the details of why, because it's not public, but he decided to use a hammer and hit her in the head several times and ended up killing her. And if that isn't gruesome enough, he then dismembered her. And he transported her head into, so he grew up in a house in Rosemont. And he ended up transporting his sister's head and two other body parts over to the house that he used to live at. And he placed the head in a shed behind the house. And then he placed one of the other body parts on the front stoop of the house. And his family wasn't living there anymore. So, you know, he rang the, or no, he actually got caught on the Ring doorbell. And then he took another body part a few houses down and put that on their front step. So this case is so bad that I'm one of the attorneys that is prosecuting it. I typically don't, I do Veterans Treatment Court, but I'm so busy, I typically don't prosecute cases anymore, but I am jumping in on this one because it's just so horrific. And I tease people, I said, I'm dead inside. I've been doing this for so long that this isn't going to impact me like it may some of our younger attorneys, that I don't want them to have this be one of their first homicide cases. And it's like, I'm not dead inside. It's just, I've learned how to compartmentalize these things and, you know, still have a life outside of work. So in this case, he is currently, he was indicted. We originally charged him with 2 counts of second degree intentional murder, one related to his sister and then also to the unborn child, little boy named Levi. He is now in order to charge anybody with a first degree murder or any other crime that carries a mandatory life sentence. I have to convene the grand jury. And so the grand jury is 23 people who are just randomly selected, and they they come in, and it's just my office calling witnesses to testify in front of the grand jury, and their sole job is to determine whether there's probable cause to charge this person with first degree murder and whatever other crimes we ask them to consider. So we did that, and the grand jury indicted him. And that's all done secret. It's a closed proceeding. There's no defense attorneys in there cross-examining witnesses. That happens at the jury trial. So the grand jury did indict him with 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder, again, one for her and one for the unborn child, and also with 2 counts of intentional murder in the second degree. And that is scheduled for trial on October 20th. All right, so I'm going to fly through these other 2 so you have time for questions. So we were sailing along in 2025, hadn't had a homicide, and then April 11th, that changed. We had a homicide in South St. Paul. Jacob Adi is the defendant. He was 36 at the time, and the victim was Michael Shilley, who was age 72. And he was living, and I think living with the victim, and was providing care to him. And I don't have a motive. I'm not sure why. I have an idea, but I'm not going to share it because I'm not sure it's true. Anyway, he used the victim's gun, and while the victim was watching TV in his bedroom, he shot him 1 time and killed him. He's currently charged with 1 count of second-degree intentional murder, and this is yet another person who has decided, he had a hearing today, and he too has decided to represent himself. You don't see that very often, and to have 2 pending murder cases where they both want to represent themselves, it's very unusual. And then our most recent homicide, you may have this hit the media. This is a case of domestic abuse. He was 48 at the time that this happened. This happened last week, May 7th. And happened in Burnsville at a residence that he shared with the victim and their 3 children. He was at work, and he had a security camera out of their house, and he was monitoring that remotely while he was at work. He saw a man coming out of the house that morning, assumed that his wife was having an affair. He immediately drove home, went into the house, and stabbed her to death. Right when he came into the house, she was on the phone with her sister, and yelled at her sister, "Knife, knife, call 911," and then the phone went dead. And the sister called the number back again, and Mr. Phyllis answered the phone and told the sister she never should have cheated on me. You better call 911. He fled the scene and was apprehended shortly thereafter and is driving his car in Lakeville. This was a case that there was a pending domestic assault case as well as a pending violation of a no contact order. So as part of the domestic assault case that he was being prosecuted for, the court issued what's called a DANCO, a domestic abuse no contact order. And so he was not to be having any contact with her. I'm not sure what happened. It was being prosecuted by the city attorney, Burnsville City Attorney's Office, but that DANCO got dismissed by a judge. So that's what allowed him to be in the house and, setting the camera to monitor her activity. So that one, right now he's charged with second-degree intentional murder. There may be a grand jury coming on that one. All right, so on a happier note, this is my family. This is my husband, Kurt, of, be 35 years in October. He's my high school sweetheart. I'm the short one in the middle, the short human in the middle, if you were wondering. That's my 6-foot daughter who lives in Seattle, and then the cute one is Izzo. That's our very hyperactive Jack Russell Terrier that brings all kinds of joy to my life. All right, well, let's open it up for questions that you may have. Yes.
Do you get involved in credit card fraud or bad check writing?
Yes, we do get involved in credit card fraud. So the cases that come to us are, so we call it financial transaction card fraud. I think it has to be, I haven't charged one for a while, but I think it has to be over $2,500 before it becomes a felony. Might be less than that, but yes, we do handle those cases. Yes, and back.
When someone is prosecuted or up for prosecution for first-degree murder, and does mental health ever considered a reason for that? Like schizophrenia, I think of the guy who cut off his sister's head and body parts. Sounds like, I mean, I was a mental health counselor, schizophrenia,
Yeah,
very volatile disease.
yeah, so it's a great question. So I can, using the Jack Ball case as an example. So there's two different avenues when we're looking at mental health after we've charged a case. So the first is before we get to a trial, we have to, in certain cases, and if we have to determine whether the defendant is competent to proceed. And so there's an evaluator that is appointed by the court. And, you know, when you're looking at that, the evaluator is determining whether the defendant can assist in their own defense. And one of the things I failed to mention in that case is that after he deposited the body parts in Rosemont, he went behind the shed and tried to kill himself. And he cut his throat. And they knew, they were looking for his car because his mom was the first person on the scene. And so she's the one that discovered all of this. And so they knew what car they were looking for, and they found him right away, and they were able to save him. So he was found, they did a competency evaluation on him, and he was actually found competent to proceed. So then where it also comes into play then is a mental illness defense. And so that is, if he were found guilty, factually guilty, then the jury would consider, but did he know what he was doing? Was he suffering, so badly from a mental illness that he did not know at the time what he was doing? So that's where it comes up second. And I will tell you, with Mr. Jack Ball, he journaled about what he was going to do. And so he is mentally ill, but not, my opinion, not so much so that he didn't know what he was doing. Any other questions? Yes?
Is there a computer system that you use to track all the activities of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that you serve?
That we charge?
Computer input, how do you?
So we have a case management system.
That's my
Yep,
question.
yep. So we have a case management system that the law enforcement agencies can upload their reports, and they populate into our case management system. We also have, for any digital type evidence, so officers are using body cam and they're taking statements or taking pictures. All of that type of evidence, they can download into what's called evidence.com. And that's Axon is the company that manufactures the body cams. And so they put all of that type of evidence into this evidence.com, which we then have access to and can go look at it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Maybe someone else for me, but this is about the youth programs that you have, when they can give different youth programs for different crimes. I commend our county on that. I also wondered, do you track whether those programs prevent recidivism or they go back and do the crimes again?
We do not. We have a targeted accountability program for low-level sex offenders. And we do track that one, and that's been very highly successful. We have, in the past 3 years in tracking that, we've only had 1% of those kids who have reoffended. And it wasn't another crim sex case. And so, most of these, I just anecdotally, I would say they're pretty successful. And if I had the staff that I could keep track of that, but we don't have the ability to do that. So there's a question back here.
Yeah, murder convictions, are there going to be more death penalties issued by the courts, or is it not? How did they even decide not to?
Yeah, well, so in Minnesota, we don't have the death penalty available to us. So the worst punishment we can get is life imprisonment. And even with first degree murder, there's certain first degree murders that aren't life in prison. They're called life in prison, but they have to serve at least 30 years, and then they're open for the possibility of parole. So murder in the first degree is a true life imprisonment. If you are convicted of murder in the first degree, you are spending the rest of your life in prison, unless the legislature does something to change that. Hopefully not. But a crime like if we have a case that we charge as a first degree where it's somebody who has a pattern of domestic abuse, that is one of those first degrees where they would only have to serve a minimum of 30, and then they can be considered for parole. Yes?
Can you explain the difference between first and second degree murder? Some of those last 5 were second degree.
Yeah, so the difference between first degree premeditated murder and second degree intentional murder is premeditation. So they're both the same, except with first degree, we have to prove that there was some premeditation. And it doesn't have to be a long period of time. Arguably with the most recent domestic abuse case, that one's still kind of active investigation, but there could be the possibility where it was enough that he drove 13 minutes to get home, grabbed a knife, and then didn't stab her just once, stabbed her multiple times. And the other thing with premeditation is you can look at where the injuries were inflicted. So there's a big difference between, inflicting somebody, on the top of their leg versus what he did. He got her in the head and then also stabbed her here and went up into her heart. So we can take those kinds of things into consideration. Any other questions? Yes?
So where are these sentences served? Within?
So they are the murder defendants. So I don't know if they still follow the same process, but when somebody is going to go into prison, men, all the women go to Shakopee. There's only one woman prison in Minnesota, so they're all in Shakopee. And the men, generally, they go to the facility, the prison in St. Cloud. You've seen that one along Highway 10. It looks like the big gray walls. Looks like from medieval times. And so it used to be that everybody went there first and spent 30 days to get acclimated to prison life, and they're placed on suicide watch for 30 days. And then they may either stay there or they may get shipped out. The really bad people that are especially violent and are misbehaving in prison go to our Oak Park Heights. That's the maximum. And I don't know if you've heard today that apparently they're going to close down Stillwater Prison. That's where a lot of them go. The murders are usually in Oak Park Heights or Stillwater. And so they haven't, I mean, it's not like they're going to open the door and release 1,100 people, but they're going to have to find, there's either going to be early releases or they're going to have to build a new prison or they're going to have to find other beds for them. I don't, they didn't talk about that today. So, all right, we done? I can take one more
I got
question.
one more.
Yeah,
A number of us received text messages on our telephones dealing with the fact that they think that we have drove our car.
I got that one. Yeah, the tolls, like you owe a toll.
So we ignore
Yeah.
it because we think it's a scam, but
Yeah,
you know, somebody, and I've gotten these over a few years.
yeah,
So obviously nobody ever gets caught.
yeah.
What
It's
happens to something like
it's
that?
really hard to, because they bounce their things from, you know, other countries and it's really
Yeah.
hard to track them down. I will give you the advice that I give my 82-year-old mother. I always tell her, it's like if you know, if you get something or somebody calls you, because did anybody get the bail? My granddaughter, or you know, is in the Otter Tail County. That's my parents got one of those. Your granddaughter Kate is in the Otter Tail County Jail. She was arrested for DWI, and I mean, they had all these. I mean, it sounded real. I mean, the granddaughter's name was right, and so what my mom did, and what she continues to do when she gets a call like that, she says, "Wait, I need to talk to my lawyer," and then they immediately hang up.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, that one. There was a jury one going around too. So, well, it has been such a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm glad the weather didn't interfere.
I am
And
too. Thank you for coming.
yeah,
and
you're
sharing with
welcome.
us. We have a little certificate to give
Oh,
you
thank you.
in appreciation.
Thank you.
And we have a tech announcement. Paul, do you want this?
This afternoon's program will be available on YouTube in a few days. Provided everything worked